I used to hate playing The Witcher 3. Now, don't get me wrong, I've loved its world, its storytelling, and its characters from the very first moment. Those are almost unmatched. But for a long time, there was one part I couldn't stand, and that was actually playing the game. The combat felt clunky, the difficulty was laughable, and even though I admired everything else about the game, I never found the gameplay itself satisfying. It just didn't click for me. The game has 4 difficulty settings, and when I played the first few times, I always used to pick normal every time. I figured that was the default, right? It's what developers typically intend for the average player. But then, at some point, I decided to pick Death March, the hardest difficulty. I wanted to know why so many people were saying that this was the real Witcher experience. And after over 200 hours on Death March, I finally understand. Death March changed how I played The Witcher 3, but more than that, it changed what I thought the game was. So, like I said, I initially went with normal difficulty, thinking I was about to experience the game the way it was meant to be played. And at first, it was fine. The world was incredible, the dialogue was rich, and the story hooked me. But the combat, it kind of felt like filler. I never needed to prepare. I never needed to use oils or potions or bombs. I would just spam light attacks, maybe throw in a sign for flair, and walk away victorious. Every fight felt the same. Even boss fights, things that should have been terrifying, ended up being predictable slogs. And because there was never any real risk, there was never any true feeling of reward. The Witcher's bestiary? Ignored. The alchemy page? Useless. I didn't even think about preparing for a monster hunt because I didn't have to. And that's where I went wrong. Because when a game gives you systems this deep, like oils, potions, bombs, monster research, and you can completely ignore them and still win easily, you're not truly playing The Witcher 3. You're just playing an action game wearing Witcher's skin. That's how I treated it back then. And that's why I used to think it was overhyped. I thought it was a good game, but not a masterpiece. And that was not because it was bad, but because I wasn't giving it the chance to be that masterpiece. And then came Death March. No more safety net, no automatic healing, no easy fights, no mercy. Suddenly, I was vulnerable. One slash from a bandit or one bite from a ghoul could end me, or take like 80% of my health. And that fear, that constant sense of danger, it completely transformed the game. On normal, I was just a god with 2 swords. On Death March, I became a Witcher. Every decision mattered. Do I fight this group of enemies now, or do I meditate and craft oils first? Do I risk pushing deeper into the forest at night, or wait until daylight when visibility is better? Do I spend my last coin repairing my armor, or buy ingredients for a potion that might save me later? Now that kind of tension didn't exist before, and it wasn't frustrating, it was thrilling, because every time I survived, I felt like I earned it. On Death March, I started understanding what it truly meant to be a Witcher in this world. You are not a superhero, you're a professional monster hunter, barely scraping by. Preparation is not optional, it's what your entire job depends on. Death March forced me to engage with everything I used to ignore. I started reading the bestiary before every contract. I brew potions, craft bombs, and coat my blade with the right oil. I planned every fight like it was my last, because often it was, and that's when the magic happens, when you finally use everything the game gives you. The Witcher 3 transforms. Suddenly that clunky combat feels deliberate. Dodging, parrying, and timing signs become second nature. Fighting stops being about mashing buttons. It starts being about rhythm, strategy, and execution. That 10% damage buff from an oil, it's not a number, it's the reason you walk away alive. And as I started thinking like Geralt, I began to feel like Geralt. Every contract was not a quest marker anymore. It was a test of my preparation and skill as a Witcher. Monsters started being puzzles waiting to be solved. That constant sense of danger made me appreciate the world on a whole new level. When death can come from anywhere, even quiet moments feel precious. Sitting at a campfire, sharpening my blades, listening to villagers whisper about missing livestock, it all meant something new. Before, I used to admire the writing. Now, I lived it. The war-torn villages, the desperate peasants, the corruption, it all hit harder because the world felt truly dangerous. It used to be that the game was telling me life was brutal, but now I was experiencing it firsthand. And I also started role-playing in a way I never had before. When a villager offered me a low price for a monster contract, I negotiated because I really needed the money, not just because I wanted to play around with the game's negotiation mechanics. When I had the choice to fight or walk away, I would sometimes genuinely choose to walk away, not because I was scared, but because I was thinking like a professional, not like a hero. And for the first time, the story and gameplay were working together, not against each other. And that's when I realized what Deathmarch really does. It doesn't just make the game harder, it makes it honest. Here's the thing about Witcher 3 combat. It's not broken, it's misunderstood. On lower difficulties, it feels slow and repetitive because you don't need to understand it. But on Deathmarch, you have no choice. Every swing, every dodge, every sign matters. You have to manage stamina, time your quench shield perfectly, and keep track of positioning. You can't just charge in blindly. You plan, you adapt, and you react. It's like the game finally forces you to speak its language. Once you learn that rhythm, everything clicks. What once felt like clunkiness becomes weight and realism. Geralt isn't supposed to feel like a flashy action hero. He's supposed to feel like a seasoned hunter. Every movement is deliberate, every swing calculated. And once I started seeing it that way, I couldn't believe I ever thought the combat was bad. It wasn't bad, I was just playing it wrong. But here's where I still take issue with The Witcher 3. Yes, Deathmarch makes the combat finally come alive, but it's also kind of ridiculous that you have to pick the hardest setting just to make it fun. That shouldn't be the price of entry. The difference between normal and Deathmarch feels like two completely different games. Hard, not the hardest, just hard, should still challenge you to plan, craft, and think like a witcher. Instead, every setting below Deathmarch is so forgiving that it skips over everything that makes the combat system interesting. It's proof that the mechanics themselves are solid, they just aren't tuned well for the lower tiers. If CD Projekt Red had balanced the difficulty curve so that hard already demanded preparation, most players would have experienced the true Witcher life without needing to max out the pain scale. So yes, there is a way to make the combat fun, but it shouldn't require going all in on the most brutal mode to see the game's full depth. I always thought The Witcher 3 was one of the best stories ever told in gaming, but after playing Deathmarch, I realized it can also be one of the best games ever made. Before, I appreciated it for its world and narrative. Now, I respect it for its systems, its design, its balance. Everything I used to think was just flavor text, oils, bombs, signs, meditation, turned out to be the real backbone of the experience. It's not that Deathmarch adds difficulty, it adds meaning. Suddenly, every coin, every wound, every decision carries weight. When you finally slay that werewolf you spent half an hour preparing for, you don't feel like a player beating a boss. You feel like a witcher fulfilling a contract. And the irony is, once the game finally became hard, it also became fun. Playing The Witcher 3 on Deathmarch taught me something simple but profound. Difficulty isn't about punishment, it's about authenticity. This mode doesn't exist to frustrate you, it exists to help you see the game the way Geralt sees the world: hostile, unpredictable, and cruel. You're not supposed to be unstoppable, you're supposed to survive. Deathmarch brings balance to the game's identity. It connects the tone of the story, the exhaustion, the politics, the grimness, with the feeling of actually living in that world. When every battle costs you something, every victory means something. And that's what makes The Witcher 3 special. Not just because it tells a great story, but because it lets you live one, if you're willing to face it on its own terms. The game didn't change, I did. Looking back, I realized my issue was never with The Witcher 3 itself. It was with how I played it. I treated a game built around preparation, strategy, and consequence like it was an action adventure, and in doing so, I stripped away everything that made it great. Now, after finishing it on Death March, I finally get it. I understand why people call it one of the greatest games ever made, not just for the story, but for how every system reinforces that story. Death March didn't make The Witcher 3 better, it revealed a masterpiece that was already there. So if you've played The Witcher 3 and thought the combat was dull or easy, try this. Start over on Death March. Play it like a Witcher. Study your monsters, mix your potions, plan your hunts. Feel the fear, the struggle, and the reward. Because once you do, you'll realize the same thing that I did. The Witcher 3 didn't need to change. You just needed to. Guys, I'm trying to make it as a full-time YouTuber, and these videos take a lot to make. So if you enjoy the videos, please consider subscribing. It truly means a lot, and it makes a big difference. Thank you for watching.